Of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello and a very happy New Year, everyone. I'm Jamie Hickson, joined by my dear friend on the phone. At least I hope that he can join us on the phone.
Yes, Happy New Year. I'm enjoying the New Year very nicely because I have a couple of women on the side.
Hector, I could barely hear you in here, man.
I am drinking carefully. So I'm having a blessed day, and we'll have a blessed tomorrow.
It sounds like it said to me that you're having a blessed day. We're glad that you're having a blessed day. I'm also having a blessed day.
Good.
I just hope that we could get a little bit more sound in here because I could barely hear you.
Can you hear me better now?
Only from the outside of the studio. It seems like there's a lot of feedback on your end.
Yeah.
But you know what? Kenny Graham is on the other side of the glass, and there is not a single problem that he cannot fix. So he's going to try and go about this thing right now. So in the meantime, you go on right ahead.
Can you hear me about the Giants? We were talking about the Giants yesterday.
Barely can hear you at all.
Start talking.
All right, I'll see if I can try and pick things up while we're at it. Of course, I wanted to let you know that if there's a story out there that you would like to have told on this show, then we would love to know about it. So definitely contact us on Facebook and YouTube, as well as Twitter and Instagram, and we would love to hear your story being told. All right, Hector, try once again.
Did they fix the problem?
Almost fixed the problem. You're a little bit loud on your end. Oh, wait a minute, that's on our end. Try again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering.
There we go.
We had a good conversation yesterday about the Giants.
Yeah. And there's going to be more conversation about the Giants because now they finally, well, they did half of the job, which is get rid of the head coach. So he's finally gone, but unfortunately, Dave Gettleman is still around as the general manager, and that's not making a lot of fans very happy right now.
No, because normally, and you know this, and you know this to be true, that when you fire the coach, and the GM's been with for a very long time, let's say he picks the coach, and then he gets fired, then the GM that's going to be in there has to work with the coach that he picked, not the one he wants.
Yeah, but this is a different case because Gettleman basically just got here. He's only been here like a couple of years.
Well, that's my point. And people want him gone now. So if he, like I said, if they fire him next year, like the way I'm reading it so far, because he's got to start working now. He's got to start building things now. If he doesn't start doing something now, they may fire him next year.
He should have been fired this morning along with the head coach. And for the record, I'm thinking of Pat Shermer, who is now out of a job. And there's already one guy being linked to the Giants who could be the number one pick for the job, and that's the guy from Baylor, Matt Rule, who just recently led Baylor to an 11-win season, and now they're going to be coaching. Now he's going to be coaching Baylor in the Sugar Bowl New Year's night against Georgia. So there's a strong possibility that maybe Matt Rule could be the guy to take over. And Rule's a really interesting candidate because, for one, he's got East Coast ties. He was born in Manhattan, but went to high school in State College, Pennsylvania, played linebacker at Penn State, got his master's degree at the University of Buffalo, then wound up spending 4 years at East Carolina, then spent 10 years coaching at Temple in Philadelphia, sandwiched around a year with the Giants. And it seems that this guy is no stranger to turning around a program. He turned around a Temple program that was struggling mightily and made them a contender in the American Athletic Conference. Then went to Baylor, a program which was already on probation. Took them from 1 win to 6 wins to 10 wins to 11 wins. And he suddenly has become a really hot guy in the NFL. So there's a strong possibility he could be the one to be the Giants' next head coach. And I think it would make a lot of sense because not only does he have a connection with the Giants, even though it was only for a year, he was born and raised in the area, and that would really make him a strong candidate, especially among the Giant fans.
What would be that connection with the Giants?
Well, for one, he's been there before. He was an assistant for a year. In fact, I think he was an assistant under Tom Coughlin for a year. He was there, I think, in 2012. He coached their offensive line, and they had a pretty decent offensive line at the time. And another connection is he was born and raised in the New York area before he moved to Western Pennsylvania to attend school.
Now, besides him, I know there's other coaches around or assistant coaches. Who do you think is available or that's going to be available?
Who's going to be available?
Who do you think is going to be available?
There's one guy who's without a job right now, and I thought he should have been the guy that the Giants picked to be the coach 2 years ago, but they did not. It's Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy's been out of a job for almost practically 2 years now. And I think it's long overdue that he wind up back in the league.
Did Dallas fire their coach too?
Nope. Jason Garrett is still there. And it's like I keep telling people, Jason Garrett is Jerry Jones's boy. And as long as he remains Jerry Jones's boy, he's going to stay in Dallas. Because he is...
He was going to get fired. I heard he got fired.
I heard the same thing, too. I've been hearing that if he didn't win the Eastern Division title, he was going to be gone. But I have not heard one single thing about Jason Garrett yet.
Yeah, because I heard that he was going to, that they were firing him, and that Jerry Jones has the same problem as Jamie Dolan. Who wants to work with him? Because he can cause some controversy himself.
Yeah. Dave Gettleman is going to be a really difficult guy to work with. He was...
Not Dave Gettleman. I'm talking about Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is the guy.
Let me tell you something. Jerry Jones runs the entire ship in Dallas. There's a reason why he bought the team. It's because he wanted full and complete autonomy over everything. Personnel decisions, coaching personnel, and player personnel, marketing, everything from what players should be on the roster to what drinks should be served at the concession stand.
Yeah, that's him.
And I'll tell you right now, that's the only reason why Jason Garrett has a job. Because, quite frankly, Jason Garrett is a yes man to Jerry Jones. There's a reason why Jimmy Johnson left after 5 years working with Jerry Jones, because the guys just could not get along.
Right. Also, I was wondering, too.
Go on.
I was just wondering, too, and that is, if they did fire him, who would you want to, knowing the way Jerry Jones is, and I know people need jobs and they want to give it 100% and they want to show people that they can coach. But who out there again would be the perfect fit for that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of coaches out there right now that are going to be saying, okay, well, right now I want to coach. I want to coach. And how many college coaches have transitioned to the NFL?
How many have transitioned from the college ranks to the NFL? Don
Yeah.
Coryell did very well from in the college ranks and in the NFL. He went from San Diego State to the San Diego Chargers, and he made San Diego State a bowl contender, and he made the Chargers a playoff contender every single year that he was there. That's
Now,
number
he
one.
did-
Jimmy Johnson was another. He
Yeah.
made Oklahoma State and Miami a contender. He made the Hurricanes a national champion, then won 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys. He's another guy that wound up having a very successful transition from college to the NFL.
Barry Switzer didn't make a good transition.
Switzer was okay. I mean, he won a title his second year with the Cowboys, and he won a couple of national titles with Oklahoma.
Yeah, but that Dallas team was stacked. If you could win with that team.
Not only that, but that team was won mostly with Jerry Jones's with Jimmy Johnson's players.
Yeah, exactly. When he wasn't, according to some Cowboys fans, he wasn't the best coach.
He might have been a little out of his league coaching in the NFL, though.
Now, there is some, I want to say, is Dave Gettleman that bad to work with?
Whether he's that bad to work with, you're going to have to ask Ron Rivera, although I could probably tell you right now, Ron Rivera probably would not have that many great things to say about Dave Gettleman.
But I'm saying the way they write him up, and from what you read, does he sound like that you can work with him, or does he sound like a fool? Because they make him sound like a fool. Like he don't know what he's doing.
Just remember who the guy was that signed Nate Solder to that ridiculous contract. It was Dave Gettleman. Also remember who the guy was that wound up making the draft choice of DeAndre Baker, a late first-round pick. That was another Dave Gettleman pick. Right now, the only guys that he seemed to be that he seemed to actually make good with his picks are Saquon Barkley and, to a lesser extent, Daniel Jones. And just so you know, Saquon Barkley barely got the football ever since Daniel Jones started being the everyday quarterback. And somehow Saquon Barkley wound up getting 1,000 yards rushing, just barely.
So you would say he's 50-50, 60-40?
I know he's 50-50 when it comes to his draft picks, that's for sure.
Oh, so he's a good draft picker.
It's 50-50 when it comes to his draft picks. I mean, he was the same guy that wound up signing Nate Solder to that big deal. And then there was also drafting Daniel Jones and also Barkley. So with this guy, it's 50-50 when it comes to personnel moves.
Okay, so he's not as bad as they make him out to be, but he's not the greatest guy in the world, right?
Definitely not. I mean, he's not a totally bad guy. It's just a matter of personnel decisions.
Okay, so let's talk about the Jets because the Jets coach actually made a meme. And made a meme out of it.
Oh, they've been making memes out of him, especially with that crazy look on his face.
Yeah, but today, when they asked him, or was it yesterday, they asked him, do you want to keep Le'Veon Bell?
And what did he say? Ask so-and-so. It just goes to show you this guy wants nothing to do with Le'Veon Bell next year. I don't know what it is, why he's got a personal vendetta against the kid, but quite frankly, he needs to grow up and just concentrate on coaching, especially the guys that he has on the field. Now, let's be perfectly clear. There is nothing to celebrate about a 7-9 team, but there's something to be said about a team that went from 1-7 the first half of the year to ending the season winning 6 of their last 8 games. This just
Right.
goes to show you that those Jets did not quit. Now, did Sam Darnold necessarily become the focal point of the Jets' winning ways the second half of the year? Not necessarily. If anything, I would look at the defense. The defense was significantly better this past season than they were last year. I know one thing, they were significantly better the second half of the season. I mean, it says something about a Jets team that wound up holding a Buffalo squad that's going to be making the playoffs next weekend to just 6 points. There's also something to be said about beating the Raiders and the Cowboys, getting a come-from-behind win against the Dolphins, which, by the way, was orchestrated by Sam Darnold. That's another thing. Sam Darnold already has, I think it's 2 or 3 come-from-behind victories in the fourth quarter or overtime of games in his time here. So I think that there's nothing but, there's nowhere to go but up with this young man. And he's had 2 years already. Now, if he could play 16 full games as opposed to 13 or 12 like he has each of his first 2 years, maybe this could be the difference in the Jets being either a playoff team or another ham and egg team.
Right.
But at the same time, the Jets really do need some improvements offensively. I mentioned over and over and over that they needed a number one receiver and a number one tight end and help on the offensive line. And while you're at it, can you please give Le'Veon Bell the ball a little bit more? Do something with him, whether it's trade him or use him as the focal point of the offense. Something needs to be done about the young man.
Here's the way I look at it. Okay, you got to get rid of that coach. You really do, and I'll tell you why. Because the GM signs Le'Veon Bell without the coach's blessing, let's say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you don't go up there and they ask you, do you want Le'Veon Bell? You don't do that. They made a meme out of it already. He acted like a fool. If you don't want him, lie. Just say, yes, of course I want him back, but whatever happens, happens. You don't just go there and act like you really don't want him. Secondly, he's got a big contract.
Which has another 3 years.
Exactly. So it's going to be hard to get rid of that contract. So either the coach is going to have to work with him or you're going to get a bad deal. You're going to have to eat some of his contract because they had a lot of money at the time. And they still do. They're under the salary cap. They're good with the salary cap. Now, I would keep him. I think he's a really good player. I think, like you said, in the draft, we got about 7 drafts, or 6 or 7 drafts. You can get a wide receiver. You can get everything you need. But you don't go up there, and when they say, do you want Le'Veon Bell? It's not up to me, it's up to whatever. You don't do that. It's bad enough that the Giants coach forced Eli Manning out of the starting position because he didn't want Eli Manning to begin with. That's another thing. The coach that you have now, that you're going to get, says, I don't want this quarterback. I'd rather have Eli Manning back. Or I want a different quarterback. What do you do then?
Obviously, there's going to have to be some kind of discussion going between the coach and the general manager, because after what Eli has done with that franchise for 16 years, you just don't discard the guy and go with some hotshot rookie who has not proven himself yet.
Oh, I mean, eventually, you always have to go with the old with the new. Eventually, you have to always give the young guy. But the way
this goes back to last year too. Keep in mind, Pat Shurmur benched Eli Manning for Geno Smith.
Yeah, because he didn't want to continue his streak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because, like I say, that you got two coaches that don't want their players.
Yep.
So let me ask you.
Mm-hmm. And let me correct myself. It was actually 2017, not 2018.
But let me ask you.
And it was someone else who was the head coach at the time.
Okay. The question that I have is, what do you do in a situation like that, where the coach, because Le'Veon Bell, once you get him on, just like Saquon Barkley, once you start turning him on, he could actually really do a lot of work.
Yeah, we've seen him play before.
But my point is, what do you do with a guy that don't want to use him? And you still have him on the contract. Do you fire the guy? Do you force him to? What do you do?
If the Jets had another 1-7 clunker in the second half of the season, then they would have probably considered firing Gase. But because they finished the season the way they did, they don't feel that there's a rhyme or reason to fire him. So they're definitely bringing him back. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, I think you might have seen the last of Le'Veon Bell, because getting only 700 to 800 yards rushing for an entire season, I mean, what justification is there for putting the entire offense on a second-year quarterback like Sam Darnold for? There was no rhyme or reason for that whatsoever. That's why I say there was supposed to be a reason why they brought in Le'Veon Bell. It was to take the pressure off of Darnold and make Bell the focal point of that offense. But it's obvious that in a game of football like this, which is predicated on passing, the Jets were going to make Sam Darnold their guy offensively.
Yeah, but like I said before, if you have again, let me see if I got this straight. You sign a guy with a big contract. This is a huge contract that's going to be very hard to get rid of. Okay? It's going to be very hard to get rid of. And even if you get draft choices and you need some of that contract, that's still going to be a hard contract because he's only 1 year into his contract.
Which means if he gets sent away somewhere, the Jets are going to have to pick up the majority of the money.
Exactly. And, and I'm going in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I would, if I was the owner, I would say work with him. Because that man can get 1,000 yards. And the reason why he didn't get the 1,000 yards is because he didn't want to work with the guy. Think about it. You know that the boy can play. You know he can play.
I'm telling you, there's something personal going on from Gase's end, that he does not want Bell as a part of his offense. I mean, could he really have that much of a grudge against a guy who wound up sitting out a whole season when he was a Pittsburgh Steeler? I mean, did he really think that he was that much of a prima donna to warrant deciding not to use the guy that much in the offense?
But that was the GM's pick. That wasn't his pick.
Exactly
But
right.
my argument, my point is, you have to work with what you have.
Yep.
And you know that he's good. That can help Sam Darnold open up the field.
Mm-hmm.
If you give him enough. If you give him enough runs, he
Yep.
could actually help Sam Darnold throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you don't know if he's going to run or throw the ball. But this coach, like the other coach, they did not want to. You can tell, and you can tell by the interviews that they did not want to use their guys.
And just so you
that's
kn-
the saddest thing.
just so you know, Adam Gase was asked all throughout his press conference today, did he want Le'Veon Bell back? He kept on referring to the general manager. And he was pressed over and over and over again. And all Adam Gase would say was, talk to the general manager, talk to Joe. What did Le'Veon Bell have to say about this whole thing? Well, his response was putting up a GIF about The Office. There was that famous expression that Steve Carell's character Michael Scott made on a recent episode, and it featured probably the most stoic expression on his face that anybody could make. And this just goes
They
to...
actually made a meme. They actually made a meme out of it, and they're making fun of this guy left and right with that one meme.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody's saying it, even if you don't like the guy. The first thing you say is, you know what? I'll be glad to have him on the team next year, or we'll work better next year.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. But you don't do that. Because the guy is really good. He's not, he doesn't stink.
By the way,
He's a good player.
here's his numbers with the Steelers. I'm talking about Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
He played 5 seasons with the Steelers. His rookie year, 2013, 860 yards. His second year, 2014, made the Pro Bowl and was All-Pro. Career high 1,361 yards. 2015 only played 6 games because he was hurt. 556 yards. 2016, 12 games, 1,268 yards. And he made the Pro Bowl. 2017, made the Pro Bowl and was first team All-Pro. Career high 321 carries for 1,291 yards and a career high 9 touchdowns. And he also caught a career high 85 passes. Missed all of last year on purpose because he wanted his new contract. And then this year with the Jets, 15 games, 245 carries, 789 yards. The guy played all but one game, and the best he could do was 789 yards. I know that offensive line was a bit of a problem, but not all of it was the offensive line. He didn't get the amount of carries and yardage that he did in his years with the Steelers because he got phased out.
And here's what I'm saying. If the coach didn't want to use him, so that's what happened.
Yep.
So, like I said, it's like the Giants coach picking his guy, even though the GM wanted Eli Manning, and in the third game or fourth game he benches them. What does that tell you?
It tells you there's no respect from the head coach's part on towards a particular player.
So do you think the owner or the GM is going to tell the coach, hey coach, we're not going to be able to trade him. You have to use him.
Well, it's going to be one of two things. Either he plays the guy and makes him a part of that offense, or they're going to have to try and look for a team to make a deal with. Because quite frankly, this whole show has gotten really, really old right now. All the memes, all of the back and forth, all of this keeping secrets of not liking a particular player for some reason or another, it has to stop now.
But I think there's going to be an intervention of some sort. Because if you're going to have Le'Veon Bell, you're going to have to, whether you like it or not, you're going to have to play him. Because you as a coach is making himself look like a damn fool if he doesn't play. Because who's going to want to hire you?
Who's going to want to hire the coach, or who's going to want to make a deal for the player?
Who's going to want to hire a coach that doesn't want to use what he has?
I can tell you that there are going to be a few teams out there that are going to show some interest in him, not as a head coach, but as an assistant coach or a coordinator.
Assistant coach, yeah. But I'm saying as a head coach.
As a head coach, that's not going to happen for a while. For now, he already has a job. So unless something drastic changes, and I'm kind of hoping that it does, because to be quite honest with you, Adam Gase is not moving the needle among the fan base at all. The way a guy like, let's see, Sean McDermott of Buffalo or Sean Payton of the Los Angeles Rams is. And let me tell you, the guy that got fired from the Giants, Pat Shurmur, he may not be the only guy to be fired either. I'm hearing that Anthony Lynn of the Los Angeles Chargers might be the next guy who could be shown out the door.
I mean, like I said, to me, it's very disastrous. I mean, the Jets and Giants at times look like a classy organization. But they're making themselves look more like fools more than anything now.
They've been making themselves look like fools for the last 7 years now.
So because this guy don't want to play this guy, the other guy wanted to get his quarterback, it became so outrageous. It became so outrageous that it doesn't make sense, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're putting your GM at risk because now the newspaper people are going to start talking. And everybody's going to start talking about, oh, look what he said, look what he said, look what he said. And, I think,
You still there, Hector? Hector, you still there? Well, looks like we have a couple of technical difficulties going on. There it is.
Because it's just making themselves, they're making themselves really look terrible.
Hector, they've been making themselves look terrible for 7 years. It's not just this last year or two. It's 7 years that this has been going on. Well, in the case of the Jets, it's 9 years because that's how long they've been without a freaking playoff game. For the Giants, it's been 7 years, except for 2016 when they got their heads handed to them by Green Bay. But other than that, I'm hoping that this doesn't take on 18-year proportions, like what happened back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is the controversy. This has been one of the worst controversies for them because they're doing it bluntly. They're saying, we don't want this guy. I don't want this guy. I want to pick this guy.
Well,
they're doing it bluntly.
See that's where we disagree. Adam Gase never publicly said, I don't want this guy. He danced around the question and practically avoided it altogether, which is just as damning as saying, I don't want this guy. If someone's going to say, talk to this guy or no comment, that's pretty damning right there. Now, as far as what the Giants are doing, their situation is a little bit more volatile because they agreed on firing the head coach, yet they could not agree on firing the general manager. Mr. Mara, John Mara, he could not decide whether he wanted Dave Gettleman back or not, whereas Steve Tisch wanted him out. So when you think about it, you've got two owners who are on the opposite sides of the spectrum deciding whether they want their general manager back or not. And quite frankly, the general manager should have been kicked out the door along with the head coach because he's been about as incompetent as the head coach has.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that all of them should have been fired and start from scratch, and whatever you get out of it, get out of it. Because now you have a GM who's going to pick a coach, and now the coach has to work with whatever he gets, and then let's say, because, like I said, the way these papers are writing this guy up, if he doesn't do anything next year, he's fired.
You know what the real problem is going to be? Whoever the new coach of the Giants is, he's probably going to want his own staff on the sidelines. And there's a strong possibility that the general manager might want to keep some of the assistant coaches from the previous regime around. And that's going to be a real problem. A head coach always wants to have his staff in the mold of his own personality. He does not want to have to inherit somebody else's mess. And that's a strong possibility of what might happen here.
And speaking of messes, the great New York Knicks coming off hot, players shooting 30 to 40 points per game. Yeah.
I don't know where you're getting this 30 to 40 points a game deal from.
Yeah, some guy just scored 30 points. Marcus Morris, there's a lot of teams that are out there that are interested in some of these guys, not only for their contract, but because if they go to a contending team, they can actually do something.
Yeah, but let's see exactly what kind of interest these retreads wind up getting from other teams right now. Because as of right now, probably the only guy that could attract interest from a contender might be Marcus Morris, because Marcus Morris has been around a long time, and he's a grizzled veteran who's been around quite a few playoff wars. Now, as far as what else they want to do with this roster, all I know is that ever since Mike Miller became the head coach, he's won more games in the span of 2 weeks than David Fizdale did in the span of the first 2 months of the season.
Do you think
So now
was a bad coach?
No.
He didn't have a plan. He was just trying to mold him.
He was never given a fair shake whatsoever by that incompetent management. And he not only was he not given a fair shake, he was never given the right personnel to try and deal with. But I'll guarantee you, even though he's out of the game right now, he's definitely getting another job somewhere. He'll definitely be somebody's assistant coach or maybe even associate head coach for somebody down the road, whether it's this year or next year. Fizdale.
Oh, if he's still going to have a job, I mean, he barely signed, ESPN already signed him for an analyst because he's got the personality.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be out of a job soon. He really is not.
Well, let's see exactly what this roster can do for Mike Miller right now. And so far,
they've got Dave Platt on the side.
Yeah, let's see.
That's another thing. You got Dave Platt on the side.
Mm-hmm.
Will he come in? Because he was another one that was supposed to be a contender.
Wait, who are you talking about right now?
Dave Platt.
You mean David Blatt?
Yeah, David Blatt. I'm sorry, I got the name wrong. David Blatt, Kenny Smith, they were up for the next jobs too.
If Kenny Smith has any sense, he keep his job at TNT because he would be way in over his head being a head coach anywhere. As far as David Blatt is concerned, as if his reputation wasn't ruined enough by LeBron James in a year and a half coaching the Cavaliers, what makes anybody think that he's going to try and do anything with that cast of characters of a roster that the Knicks have right now?
Well, here's the thing. If you give him a fair shake, okay, look at the roster for a second.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and what I'm seeing is a 9-win team.
No. Think of it logically for a moment, because I know you don't like them.
I'm looking at them logically, and I'm seeing a team that is 9-23.
Right, I get it.
And the only reason why they've even reached 9 wins is because they finally decided to play like it's worth a damn for Mike Miller. And as of right now, I wouldn't even want to bring anybody else. Just keep Mike Miller as it is.
Exactly, but here's what I'm looking at, okay? And you know this to be true. We all know this as Knicks fans. We suffered a lot because they either sign bad contracts or they'll do something screwy. They'll get old men. They'll do something screwy. Now, the GM did something right for a change, just like last year. Yeah, they didn't win. Okay, fine, but they're trying to build a team. All right? Now, the team that they have now, they're signing the guys for 1 to 2, the max 3 years. But they can get rid of those guys because the second year is the option year. Okay? So now, that being said, that's a smart move. And now you have players on the team that if you really want to trade them to a contending team, you can get more draft picks and so forth. Now, the only thing that I'm scared of is that they'll get people. No, they'll get someone out there that as long as they get players, as long as they get players, or they get draft picks for Marcus Morris, or if they can get a package together to see if they can get a superstar that doesn't want to play for them, that's at the end of the contract or something, that can happen too. They can get a really good package, but they also have draft choices and so on. Now, will they get the GM from the other guy? Who knows? But for now, it seems that when they play together, they actually play like a blast team. When they play, just like everybody else, the Mets, Yankees, and so forth, when you see them play, you see potential. The only thing that always scares me about the Nets is that every year you always have a new roster. So how are you going to win with a new roster over a year? You've seen it. Every year they sign about 10 players. This year they signed about 10 different players. How are you going to win like that? You know, I'm looking at it as hopefully the draft will be good. Hopefully, that's what New York fans have to look forward to. That, you know, you hope and pray that they actually do something smart. And then they go, okay, you know what? They'll make good draft picks or they'll try to get a superstar that doesn't want to be on the other team. That's the best I can hope for. Because right now, the Nets, they got Durant and Irving, and Irving's hurt. And you said it last time that as long as he's hurt, he doesn't play for a very long time. He doesn't stick around for the entire.
And that was the danger of bringing this guy in, the fact that he's just not a durable guy. He doesn't play 80 games. And already he's played, roughly 11 games this season? Speaking of the Nets, they're playing the Timberwolves in the next 45 minutes. That's another team that's got some problems right now. Not only did they get their heads handed to them by the Knicks in Brooklyn, they had their teeth kicked in by the Houston Rockets over the weekend. The Rockets team that had one James Harden torching them from left to right. Now this time, the Nets are going to have to try and grind out a victory against the Timberwolves squad that's just hurting really, really badly right now.
Yeah.
Speaking of superstars, you mentioned superstars. You know how the Knicks can really try and get themselves some credibility? See if they could go after the Jersey kid, Karl Anthony Towns. A guy who has played some great basketball in his time here, but is a defensive liability. He's one superstar who could give them at least a little bit of credibility. That's number one. Number two, try and get a really, really groundbreaking draft pick. At this rate, they're going to be in the top 5 of the draft right now. I kept on championing Cole Anthony of North Carolina. Unfortunately, the kid is hurt right now, so now his health is going to be in question when the draft comes around. And there's also the matter of LaMelo Ball, who's already tearing up the Australian League to pieces. There's going to be questions about him and his dad when you think about it. So let's see exactly what both of these franchises can do.
Because remember what they said about LaMelo last year? He was trying for the NBA last year. They were saying he stunk, he wasn't really good.
He was just a teenager, first of all. Second of all he had to do was try and prove himself in a pro league somewhere. He practically got himself kicked out of UCLA. That was his first strike. So him trying out for the NBA was not going to happen for him this year. Maybe next year, possibly. But he's going to have to do a little bit of growing up and get his dad out of the picture, plain and simple. So are you there, Hector?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because what I was saying is last year, because last year they were saying he was trying to go for the NBA and he didn't make it. Now that he's improved, but he's his foot's hurting. So do you go after him? And if you're the Knicks, you go after him, and God forbid his foot hurts again, then they're gonna say, "Oh man, got it, was hurt." So you can't win. Now, do you trade Dennis Smith Jr.?
Nope. Hasn't happened yet.
Oh. Okay, now call Anthony Towns. What's the package you would get him for?
What type?
He's not a free agent, is he?
If I'm not mistaken, I think he's under contract for a few more years. So it's going to take a pretty penny to get this guy.
So you're the GM. Give something reasonable. What would be a reasonable thing? Not give the world, but what would be reasonable?
Something reasonable. A pair of number ones, a trio of number twos, and at least 2 players. And for the record, that's just a matter of opinion.
What would be the reasonable again?
In my eyes, I think it's more than fair.
What?
Acquiring Karl Anthony Towns from the Timberwolves for a pair of number 1 picks, a trio of second-round picks, and a pair of players.
So you're saying 5 to 7 players for one guy?
2 players and potentially 5 others, yeah.
That's too much. No, I'm sorry. That's too much. You're giving. I mean, the Knicks already have 7 draft choices, and you give the whole team away.
Mm-hmm.
To me, you have to be smart, such as, okay, I'll give you 2 number ones, and I'll give you some of the players that I have that are under contract. That way you can be under the top. That way you can under the salary cap, and you can do what you want. That's more better than giving up the whole team. That's 7 players or 5 players. That's a lot for one to do.
In order to get quality, you've got to give up quality.
Yeah.
And Karl Anthony Towns is a quality player.
Yeah, but it all depends what Timberwolves need. Let's say you give up 2 number ones and they want Dennis Smith Jr. and Marcus Morris. Okay.
If that's what the Timberwolves want, I am more than happy to give them that pair of players right then and there. I mean, don't get me wrong. Marcus Morris is a really good veteran player for any team to have, but he's nothing like Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, to me, that's somewhat of a deal because it works out, because not only do they have to match salary.
Keep in mind, the Timberwolves want to be able to build something for down the road.
That's true, too.
I don't seem to recall the Timberwolves having any playoff games in recent history.
Yeah, but I remember when you trade...
The 2017-18 season.
But remember, when you do trades, you have to do salary. You have to go by salary.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you got to think of, that the salary, they got to match salary. So at this point in time, so that's what I'm saying, 2 number ones and probably 3 players that they're expiring contracts. That way they can do whatever they want with it.
And for the record, Karl Anthony Towns is signed all the way up until 2024.
Oh, wow. Because I heard that rumor, too, that the Knicks may get him, but they were in talks of getting him, and they were in talks of getting that GM.
Well, let me tell you, if they want any kind of credibility of any whatsoever, start with Karl Anthony Towns. See if you can cut a deal for him using a few players and some draft picks. Because I'm telling
Yeah.
you right now, the Timberwolves want draft picks, not just players. They want to build something for their future.
What about what about what about you have so many things that you could do that Timberwolves could do a lot.
Yeah, they
Especially
could.
if that one guy doesn't want to be there. You know, that's one thing. If I don't want to be there, you know, that one.
They could probably
You're
do
welcome.
a whole bunch of different things. It depends on what their mindset is.
That's the
I mean,
thing.
do they want to contend now, or do they want to build something for their future? If they want to build something for their future, then maybe it's best that they try and cut a deal for some expiring contracts. That way,
Yeah.
they would either bring in a superstar player or get themselves some draft picks to try and build around for down the road.
Exactly. I agree with you on that. Thank you. Okay. I agree with you on that. You know, and the next two, if they want to start building for the future,
That's
they
the
have to
only
start doing
thing they can
something
do
now.
is build
But
for
the
their
thing is,
future.
If you're going to get a guy that can't play defense, is it really worth it?
Wait, what was that again?
If you're getting a guy that is an offensive player,
Mm-hmm.
but he can't play defense.
He's
is
very
it worth
lazy
it?
defensively.
So that's what I'm saying, is he worth getting because he's so lazy defensively.
Usually, I'm not really one for sacrificing defense, but in the case of a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, that's a risk that they're going to have to take, because when was the last time the Knicks really had a guy that was a go-to guy offensively? Carmelo Anthony, maybe? I know before that it was Patrick, but Carmelo Anthony was the only guy that the Knicks had for a good 6.5 years that you could honestly say was the guy to go to when the game was on the line. And let me tell you right now, Minnesota has nothing, I repeat, nothing on their roster that tells me that they could try and build something immediately. After
Exactly.
Karl Anthony Towns and maybe Andrew Wiggins, who could they possibly go to? I mean, Gorgie Deng, Jeff Teague, Noah Vonleh, Jordan Bell. I wouldn't go to any of those guys.
Right.
So
Because right now, the Knicks, they're in a good position. Believe it or not, they're in a good position because of the contract. They're in a very good position to be able to do something like that. So in that aspect, they did something smart. But I wish they could get that other guy from the Timberwolves, the Gene.
you know, if you really wanted to get a great general manager, seriously, why not make a play for Masai Ujiri? Show some guts and ask for permission to try and at least interview the guy. That's all I'm saying. Whatever it takes to get the guy, do it. Anyway, that's going to do it for us, folks. Thanks to Kenny Graham on the other side of the glass. And of course, Hector, thank you for joining us on the phone.
Happy New Year!
And Happy New Year to all you guys for watching. For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
I'm Hector.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you in 2020.